Hey guys, and welcome to another tutorial on 3D Studio Max. Right now I'll be discussing advanced unwrapping as well as go over some of the basics of unwrapping a 3D model. And right here I have a very basic low polygon Baymax that I found. I did not model this, but I decided I wanted to try and give this an unwrap since I like the base model of it, and Turbosmooth, it looks really good. Let me just put a Turbosmooth modifier on here. There you go. And oh, I didn't copy this as a reference. Let me just do this. I'm going to collapse everything down into an edit mesh or an edit poly, however I want. I'm going to mirror and reference it so I have an exact copy on the other side. And make sure it looks pretty even like this. There you go. I'm going to turn off my wireframe. Not bad, not bad. So once you're happy with the 3D model you got and it's complete together, parts are attached, you can begin the unwrapping process. Now, the unwrapping process can be a bit difficult, but we're going to take it through a little bit step by step here, and I'll teach you some of the tools. So in my modifier list, I'm going to type Unwrap UVW, and I'm going to add it to the modifier stack. So once it's at the top of the stack, you can click on the plus sign, and you'll see that there's 3 different options: vertex, edge, polygon. And you're able to modify those. It's not modifying your 3D model. It's actually just modifying the unwrap, which is your 3D model flattened out onto a 2D image. Now, the way you can see that is you just go down the menu here, and you'll see that on the Unwrap UVW tools, there is an Open UV editor right under our selection tools. If you open the editor, you can see our wireframe is a complete mess. Everything is kind of everywhere. And like 3D Studio Max, like regular, you can use the mouse wheel to control the camera. So you can use the scroll wheel, zoom in and out, hold down the middle mouse button to pan around. So I'm going to grab all the polygons first thing. And I want to kind of organize this mess. So I'm going to highlight, left click and drag off of any of the polygons and capture all of them. So now you see my entire side is selected here. Okay. So I'm going to scroll down my list of options. We don't really need to use channel right now. We don't need the peel tools. Important tools that we're going to use is called the projection tools. Now, the projection tool is how 3D Studio Max is viewing those polygons and flattening them out. So right now, just to clear things up, I want to use a planar map, which is kind of the camera looking at one direction at whatever you have selected. So if I click that, you'll notice that everything goes into the working area box of our texture map, which is this, and squeezes down and tries to fit itself in. If I click on X, that's the result I get, which you can see the yellow square here represents how the camera is looking at the object. And if I click Y, it's like that, and Z from the top view. So I'm going to click on Y because it gives me a good front view of the character. And I'm going to click on planar map again to disable it. And I'm going to drag it out of my workspace because anything I keep in my workspace, I want to consider the final part of my unwrap model. So right now, if we look at our checker pattern, and to look at that really quick, just look at this bar here. You'll notice that there is a checker pattern. It says it right there. You can just click on that and click on checker pattern once more. And you can see the checker pattern of the character. Now, your whole character should be a good series of checker patterns. But right now, you can see there's like weird stretching going on. Certain spots don't look too bad. But overall, it's pretty messy. So what you want to start doing is breaking down this character into pieces. Breaking down the unwrap until you get something you want. So for instance, I'm just going to do the arm for this tutorial. Now, if you're lucky enough, you modeled your character in with separate elements, separate boxes attached together, separate polygons, and you can just click on that element. So if I click and drag my mouse on this, I can just keep pulling a little bit, hold Control to select more polygons, left click and drag, hold Control, left click, drag, hold Control, left click, drag. And you can see I captured the whole arm here. That's great if your model is separated. Now, sometimes your model isn't separated. So what you need to do, and for instance, I just want the hand here. So I'm going to go around here and I'm going to grab the hand. Let's say the hand and some of the fingers. Just like right up to here. Now, let's say I want to click and drag this off of the character so I can access it. I'm just going to fiddle around and grab some more polys here. Like that. So I got what I want. I think this is pretty good. Okay, so I got what I want. I have my hand. Now I want that. Well, if I click and drag right now, it's actually attached to the polygons above it, but I don't want it to be. So the best thing to do is while you have those polygons selected and you want to make that new seam line that breaks apart from the arm, so this is just going to be the hand, I'm going to go to Tools. I'm going to go to Break. What that does is it breaks apart the polygons that you have selected from everything else. So now that I have left click and drag, you can see the hand can move itself. And I can see some of the polygons I actually want to drag with me. I'm going to undo. I'm going to control, left click and drag. Control, left click and drag. This might be a tough one here. So I'm just going to do that. Okay, there you go. Tools, break again. There you go. Now I got my hand separated from the rest of my arm. And let's say I want to get the rest of the arm. I'm going to left click and drag, left click and drag, left click and drag until I get all the polygons of the arm. Whoop, I grabbed too much there. So I get all, I'm grabbing too much. I'm doing it all wrong. Okay. Left click and drag, left click and drag, left click and drag. There we go. And I'm grabbing the rest like so. There's a lot of arm. There you go. Did I get it all? There you go. I got it all. And now, since these are separate parts, I know this is the arm. I know this is the hand. And I'm going to want the head and the leg soon. So I'm going to grab the body as best as possible. And an easy way to separate the body from everything else is left click and drag. Grab all the extra polys that are being stretched out. And now you know that that's the body. The arm here, hand here, head here, and leg there. Now that we have them in separate pieces, we can begin unwrapping those pieces. So I'm going to do the leg first since it's a pretty simple object, a pretty simple shape. I'm going to zoom in. And I know that certain parts of the leg, like the side, are being really stretched out. The best tool I can think of, and this is what you have to start thinking of, you have to think about breaking your object into pieces. So the best tool I can think of that matches the shape of the leg the best is like a cylinder. The best shape, sorry, I should say, is a cylinder. So what I want to do is I want to grab all the parts that I think fit into a cylinder shape. So pretty much all the way down to there, maybe a little bit more. So I'm going to zoom in here. I'm going to grab a bit more, zoom in, control left click to drag. Control left click and drag to select more. And I think this is a pretty good selection. I got a majority. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit. And maybe just select a little bit more here. And I think this is pretty good for the legs. So I'm going to take that and I'm going to think, maybe a cylinder map would be the best. So I go over to my projection tools, and not the planar map, but I pick the cylindrical map. And 3D Studio Max does a weird guess of what it thinks you want. But if you click the align options, X, Y, Z, or best align, you can get a closer option and it starts wrapping around what you need. Now you can see that my leg map turned out really good here. This is pretty good. That's a pretty good unwrap. But you'll notice something strange that can happen in 3D Studio Max. Certain seams aren't welded together. You can see that we have one nice big seam line going across the top, the bottom, and the side there. But over here, there's a lot of broken seams. And if we look close, we can see, or maybe it's a little bit hidden away here. Yeah, sorry, it's a little bit hidden away. Maybe I'll just hide this for now. And the polygons. You can see over here, there you go, the unwelded seams. So what we want to do is go to vertex mode, and we want to use a tool that's called Target Weld. Now, using the Target Weld tool, you can left click and drag something, and you'll notice that there's a W letter. That means it's going to weld to the next thing that you have selected. So if I left click and drag a vertex that isn't welded to something, you'll notice that once it goes over a blue vertex, like this one here, they're allowed to be welded together. So the reason why when I click this vertex, another one goes blue is because 3D Studio Max is telling you that these two vertexes are associated together and they can be welded together. So if I do that and left click again, you'll notice that the seam line that was broken is now gone. and we have our seam line forming perfectly around the object. So if we just left click, if you know the vertexes are on top of each other, you can just left click right on top of it, and you'll notice that it starts welding together. Our target weld tool is still active, and we can keep left clicking and welding these together all the way down. And you'll notice that in our 3D view, those seam lines are also disappearing. So I'm going to keep going down here until they all disappear. And it looks great. Now there is a seam line here, but that's just a part of my 3D model, and that's absolutely fine. And as long as we have one major seam line around the entire 3D model, it looks like we're bang on. I'm going to click on checker pattern again to make sure the checker pattern looks good. Just like that. It doesn't look too bad. It's a little stretched out, but what we can do to fix that is we're going to highlight all these polygons. We're going to use the scale tool, left click on top of it, and by doing that you open up two new scale tools where you can stretch it out horizontally or vertical. So I'm going to go here, and you're going to notice in real time you can see what that checkerboard is looking like. Now we want our entire model to be made out of pretty much checkerboards of the same size for the same detail. Remember that in 3D Studio Max, the more checkerboard is on a part of a model means a lot more detail can be put on that model. But also remember that your 3D model must fit in to this active texture viewport here that you have. Because when you render out the UV template, this is what you're going to be able to draw on. And you need that to draw on top of your texture, to put it into 3D Studio Max, and to put it into a game engine. Now, that leg is looking really good. But maybe it could be a little bit better. So what I'm going to use is a very special tool called the Relax tool. What the Relax tool will do is it will smooth out the polygons to try and be as accurate as possible to the actual polygons that you have selected. If I go Relax by Polygon Angles and click Start Relax, you'll notice that the polygons are stretching a bit and kind of scaling. They're adjusting to what the actual model's polygon width and height, the height and the width of those polygons actually are. And our checkerboard looks more fluid across the skin. This gives us a much more realistic paint job when we're about to texture it. Now, I want you to look at your own 3D model and try and interpret the pieces just like I've done with Baymax's leg. So I use the cylindrical map for the top part of the leg, but don't forget, we still had the bottom foot that we still have to texture. Now, I know that people are going to see this foot pretty much flat on all the time, and the foot is a pretty flat shape on its own. So I'm just going to use the planar map really quick. Yeah, I click on X, Y. I like the Y axis. It looks pretty good. And I'm going to go to my tools. I'm going to use my Relax tool. Go by Relax by Polygon Angles. And you'll see that sometimes you get an error, and sometimes little things like this can happen. Just wait a minute for your polygons to completely relax. 3D Studio Max does its best guess at thinking how accurate it could be. And if I look at my 3D model, it's a fairly accurate checkerboard. Now I do have a little seam line here, but that's from Baymax's actual model because we have a small wire going around him. But the actual model itself is looking really good. So I'm just going to take the main foot part here, like so. Grab the rest of it, and I'm going to put this into my active viewport, scale it down, maybe match the same size of my other checkerboard, about that. There you go. There's a nice little seam line. The seam line is inside, which will never face the player. And I have tons of space to use the rest of my texture work with. So just keep in mind the tools that we were using. Target Weld is to weld vertexes that should be welded together. Breaking, which breaks apart polygons from the other and creates new seams. And also using the Relax tool, so when you grab polygons, it smooths them out. Those are three very important tools that can help you use the UV editor to your advantage and actually make everything maybe just a little less of a pain. So that was just my foot. Your model is going to be completely different, so doing the rest of Baymax isn't going to help you. Just remember those very special tools, opening the UV editor and using the projection mappers with polygons that you have selected, and you'll be able to unwrap like a pro in no time as long as you keep practicing. Very important. Thanks for watching my video. I know this was a little long, but just rewatch it if you have any trouble. And if you have any more questions, feel free to ask me. Maybe I'll make a video about it. See you guys soon.